when you start to feel that constriction and those racing thoughts and however anxiety like manifests in your body, my first challenge to you is instead of just thinking like, oh, here's my anxiety and feeling like, oh, this is just part of who I am, this is part of my life, starting to look at it as, oh, my system is dysregulated. And so with anxiety, it's like, oh, I'm starting to feel some dysregulation. My body is going into this fight or flight mode. Now you have the option to start to put yourself back into regulation. Hi, friend. Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about anxiety. Now, anxiety is something that I used to struggle with big time back in the day before I had any concept of what was happening with my emotions and my body and my thoughts. I had no clue. It was all this big, confusing and anxious jumble. And today, with my education and with my training, I have such a clearer picture of what's actually happening when I start to experience some level of anxiety. And it's funny because yesterday I was driving to work and I noticed my body and I noticed that things felt a little tight. And I'm not talking about like my muscles from a workout. I'm talking about kind of in my chest area when you kind of sense into your body and you feel like I'm just feeling kind of constricted and kind of wound up today. My thoughts are a little bit more negative and just the world has like just a little like of a darker feeling. And with all of my, knowledge and training, I was able to immediately be like, oh, okay, my system's a little bit off. And I have this, 60-minute drive ahead of me to really work on getting some regulation back into my system. And it was a really productive drive. And then I thought to myself, well, I should share this with you to really help give you the tools to do the very same thing. So when you are, starting out your day and you're just feeling off, right? And you're feeling, it's interesting how when our system is off and we're starting to have the symptoms of anxiety, how it always feels like it's everything outside of us, right? Like everyone else is in a bad mood or everyone else is different and things. It's so natural to feel like the problem is outside of ourselves and we start to feel this overwhelm and our system has gotten dysregulated. When I first learned about anxiety and I was able to identify like, oh, okay, this uncomfortable experience that I sometimes have internally is called anxiety. And for a while, I kind of carried that label, right? And it's almost like, well, I have anxiety. Like I might say, like, I have a dog at home, right? And I run into clients and to people who have this ownership over this experience of anxiety. And they lead with that. Oh, well, my anxiety was stirred up today, or I have anxiety. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about. This idea that anxiety is something that you have, and that maybe if you feel this ownership of I have it, then it feels like you're always going to have it, right? There's some sense of permanence and some sense of ownership over this idea that this affliction is with me, right? It's part of me. And so the way that I really look at anxiety now with a deeper understanding is your system is dysregulated, right? And so we've talked in the past episodes about like your system is in the red. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's start with your autonomic nervous system, right? Our nervous system goes into fight or flight when we feel like there's danger around us. And so what happens is all this survival energy gets stirred up and our body gets ready to either run away from the danger or to stay and fight. And if that gets to be too overwhelming and doesn't feel like we can succeed, then our nervous system goes into shutdown and we feel disconnected. We might feel some depression coming in. We feel this sense of collapse or we feel kind of spaced out. our body, our nervous system is still trying to protect us from this perceived danger. So, just right off the bat, when you start to feel that constriction and those racing thoughts, and however anxiety manifests in your body, when you start to feel that, my first challenge to you is, instead of just thinking oh, here's my anxiety, and feeling oh, this is just, part of who I am, this is part of my life, starting to look at it as, oh, my system is dysregulated. My system is getting in the red. Just like if our body starts to heat up with a fever, right? Our body does so many amazing things to keep us safe and to protect us. And we know what that's like, to be oh, okay, I'm getting warm. I have a fever. I'm probably fighting something off. And so with anxiety, it's oh, I'm starting to feel some dysregulation. My body is going into this fight or flight mode. Now you have the option to start to put yourself back into regulation, right? And so that is the work that I did on my drive yesterday. So the first step, really noticing into my body. And it can be so foreign for us to try to sense into our body. And this is the part of the lower part of the brain. So our brain stem and our autonomic nervous system really holds this stress and this survival energy throughout our body. And when we start to pay attention, when you start to feel anxiety, noticing it, sense it into your body. So ask yourself, where do I feel this anxiety? And most of the time, anxiety and any kind of negative emotion is going to feel like constriction. It's going to feel like tightening, pressure, right? It's as a system, you're closing up. And so noticing, where do I feel this? And so anxiety really starts physically in our body, and then it goes to how we feel and then what we think. But starting with your body, noticing your body, and then the 3-minute exercise that we're going to do, we call it bottom up, because we're going to address the body and really go right in and address the nervous system to get that regulation back in place. And then it's going to trickle up to helping our emotions calm down and then helping our thoughts straighten out. And so this is a bottom-up approach to really getting our system back into regulation. The way that I conceptualize that is your mind is somewhere else. We've all had this experience, right? Where let's say you are driving to work and you don't even know how you got through the last 5 miles because you don't remember it, because your mind is somewhere else. Your mind is not with your body. You are also disconnected from your body, right? You're not sensing into your body at all. It's almost like your mind is its own thing, and the present moment and the physical body are separate from you, right? And then your system is dysregulated. So you're in this fight or flight state. And so what do we want? We want to get the body to where we are in the present moment, right? We're aware of what's happening right in front of us. Our thoughts aren't off, ruminating about this or worried about that or stressing about that. Our thoughts will be right here with us in the present moment. We'll be embodied, meaning we're connected to our body. We are aware of if there's contraction or expansion happening in our body, right? And then we'll feel grounded. And we use the word grounded really to mean regulated, to have our nervous system in this state of ventral vagal safety and this ability to take in everything that's happening around us, to not be preoccupied with thoughts or feelings of danger, to be able to connect and enjoy with people around us. And so this is regulation. And so that's what we're going for. So we're starting from a place where our mind is elsewhere, our mind is kind of disconnected from our body, and we're in fight or flight. That's anxiety. It's not something you own. It's not something you are. It's a state that you're experiencing. And what we want to do is shift into, hey, I'm grounded in the present moment. I'm embodied. I can sense into my body. I'm not disconnected from my body. And I'm regulated. I don't have these stress hormones pumping through me because I can see that there's no danger here and I'm okay. And so that's what we're going for. So how do we do that? How do we shift from this dysregulated, anxious state to this grounded, embodied, here in the present moment state? So what I've put together is essentially it's 3 minutes. And I'm thinking if you have a lot of anxiety, let's say on your way to work or in the mornings, this is something that you could do maybe when you're taking a shower in the morning. You could definitely do it on your commute when you have time, if you're driving or however you're commuting to work. And then also before bed. So if you have trouble sleeping or if you wrestle with this feeling of anxiety as you're trying to sleep, then doing this little 3-minute exercise before you go to bed and then when you wake up in the morning is a great way to start just getting your system regulated in these intervals that have consistency. So you start to train your nervous system for this regulation. And if this sounds like there's no way that you think you could manage your anxiety in a way to have this growing regulation and this growing sense of grounding, right, where your body is actually responding to what's happening and not your mind is off over here responding to these imagined threats of danger, but that you're actually here in the present moment, it's absolutely possible. And I think what's so empowering about looking at anxiety in this way, just as, hey, my system's getting into the red, I need to get myself back into the green, versus I have anxiety and this is what I live with, is that you're in charge. You can change it. You can take control of your experience and you can make it better. Okay, so with our 3-minute exercise, we're going to go through everything and then we'll actually do a timed 3 minutes that you can go along and do it with me. So the first piece of it is going to be box breathing. And if you've watched any of my episodes, I love to talk about box breathing because it is one of the fastest ways to kind of get some control over a dysregulated nervous system. And so when I say box breathing, what I mean is you will count your breaths. So you will count to 4 as you breathe in. You will count to 4 as you hold your breath. Then you count to 4 as you exhale that big breath. Then you count to 4 as you hold your breath again. And then you repeat. So now we're going to count to 4 and inhale for 4 counts. Hold your breath for 4 counts. Exhale for 4 counts. Hold your breath for 4 counts. And so in your mind, the way that I see it, it's like you're building this box of 4 counts up, hold for 4, 4 counts, exhale, hold for 4, and you're just going around the box. Now, the number is completely arbitrary. I like to do 4 because, holding your breath for 4 whole counts really does slow things down, right? With anxiety, everything gets kind of accelerated because the body's getting ready to fight or run away. And what we're doing when we come in and we control the breath, we manage the breath, is that we're slowing down that system. We're slowing everything down. And as we manually override our body's tendency to want to maybe breathe more shallow, everything's constricted, breath is way shorter than 4 counts. This is just sort of like forcing our body to wait, slow down, get more air in. And so manually starting to put the brakes on this accelerated experience of anxiety. So if 4 breaths is too much for you or doesn't feel comfortable, you could do 3, you could do 2. Maybe you want to do 6 counts, right? So find what works for you. For me, 4 is a really nice sweet spot, and so I just stick with that. And so another reason that doing the box breathing is so powerful for getting in there and starting to really dial down that experience of anxiety is because we're using the top part of our brain, so that prefrontal cortex where we have our logic and we have our language and all of these higher functions. And this is the part of the brain that can be off ruminating, can be involved in worry, can be coming up with all kinds of crazy scenarios that are giving you anxiety, these, future things that might happen, or ruminating about what happened in the past, right? We're overriding that part of the brain, and we're giving it a job, and we're telling it to count, which is a very simple job, but it requires focus. And so we're gathering all of that chaos of the mind, the thinking mind, and we're directing it towards counting. And then at the same time, that counting, we're controlling the body with our breath. We're kind of forcing that expansion in our chest with the deep, 4 count breaths. And then holding the breath is really causing everything to slow down. So you can see why box breathing is such an effective way to start to get that system back into the green. Okay, so the second step to our 3-minute anxiety extinguisher exercise is something that was developed by Dr. Peter Levine. And Dr. Peter Levine has spent decades creating this whole school of thought called somatic experiencing. And he is the guy, a brilliant, brilliant man who noticed that other mammals in the wild don't develop conditions like PTSD after they experience trauma, which is kind of crazy when you think of how much trauma, wild animals experience. How many times a day their lives are threatened and they have to get out of a situation where their bodies have to go into this fight or flight to save them, and then they're able to calm down and then move on and not be impacted by the effects of trauma the way that humans are. And so he studied them, and he noticed that they're able to discharge the survival energy that gets released into the system when they go into fight or flight. And so this can be seen as some shaking or some trembling after they get out of a dangerous situation. It can be seen when some animals as like doing some extra like big jumps after they're, free from danger. But what they see is this energy comes out, and then they do some big regulating breaths, and then they're fine. And so his whole school of thought is having us sense into our body and complete the survival actions. So complete what our bodies needed to do for fight or flight to discharge that extra survival energy to allow our system to get back into the green. So with polyvagal theory, this is we're going from the sympathetic nervous system is activated with the fight or flight, and then we're getting back into this ventral vagal, calm, safe, connected. It's like this state that we all want, right? Or like we want to be happy, we want to be able to enjoy and connect. It's ventral vagal is what we want. But because all of this fight or flight experiences really essentially get stuck and clogged up in our body, and this thwarted survival energy gets stuck, and we're disconnected from the body, this creates the conditions for anxiety and many other disorders. And so what we're going to do in this next part of the exercise, Dr. Levine calls the Vooo breath. So Dr. Levine has come up with his Vooo breath as a way to really stimulate that ventral vagal state to kind of calm that fight or flight in the nervous system and to help us to really move back into this feeling of safety and this feeling of being embodied and grounded and feeling like, okay, there's no danger here, right? It's almost like it vibrates in your throat when you do it, and it calms your nervous system down. I always think of a cat and how cats will sit there and purr, and it's like this little motor, and we hear this little vibration. And, cats have such sensitive nervous systems, right? They get startled and then they'll go and stretch out and be safe. And when they're in that safety mode, we hear them purring. And I think that was like nature had installed this ability for them to really calm their nervous system and get into this place of ventral vagal safety. And so I think that, Dr. Levine's Vooo exercise, it's almost like we are doing this manually for ourselves and creating this vibration in our throat to tell our nervous system you're safe, right? Okay, and so we're going to do it here, and then at the end, we're going to put it all together into the 3 minutes. So we're going to do a big breath in, and then on the exhale, I'm going to make the sound Vooo, and trying to make it sound a little bit like a foghorn, and really paying attention to having that vibration in the throat. And just when when your exhale ends, then you're done with it. And then just really noticing into your body, noticing how things feel. And it can take a little while for this to kind of like settle in your body. Okay, so here we go with the Vooo breath. And just taking a couple of nice, easy breaths after, and just kind of noticing, sensing into your body. Almost kind of feels like a ripple effect. It's very calming. And then for me, I always notice like, oh, things are brighter. My field of vision is a little bit bigger. And there's some expansion, right? Which is the opposite of anxiety. So we're going to work this into our anxiety extinguisher routine. This is something that you can really put this tool in your back pocket for when you start to have awareness that like, oh, I'm starting to feel tightness in my chest. My thoughts are starting to race. I'm feeling anxious. Finding a nice place where you can go and just do a nice long Vooo breath and then let your nervous system kind of settle. And I'm feeling like way more relaxed right now. So it's definitely a powerful exercise. Okay, so the third little piece of our 3-minute anxiety extinguisher is, I'm just calling it expansion. And this really goes back to Dr. Levine's work with really noticing into our body. Anxiety and trauma is it's contraction, right? It's this tightness, this pressure, this heaviness. And what we're looking for to relieve anxiety is to feel some expansion, to feel some space, to have some options. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by having something in your space that you enjoy. And so it can be something beautiful, like I have my salt lamp here. When I look at it, I have good feelings. And it could be something like that you look at. It could be a lotion. I really like to keep a nice smelling lotion with me because smell is one of those things that can really bring us into this state of like, oh, I like that, like very quickly. So if you have like a lotion and you smell it and you notice, okay, this is pleasant, right? We're trying to get that green state of our nervous system, that ventral vagal, and then paying attention to your body and really asking yourself, like, how do I know in my body that I like this? And so going back to my salt lamp here, I love candles. I love light. This is just a beautiful color. Like there's a lot of things that I like about this. I like the meaning that it has for me because I think of, the radiance, the light that I think is in all of us. And so there's just deep meaning for me with why looking at this salt lamp makes me feel good feelings. And so as I look at it and as I feel the good feelings, the enjoyment of looking at it, I notice into my body, How is my body telling me that I like this? And it's always this feeling of expansion for me. And so it could be expansion. It could be this feeling of a little bit of warmth somewhere, but there's going to be maybe a lightness. If you went from, feeling anxious, you did your box breathing, you did your Vooo, and now you're resourcing and noticing something in your environment that you enjoy, noticing, allowing that to reach your body, and seeing, like, maybe maybe before you were feeling just weighted down, and now maybe it's like, oh, my arms are a little bit lighter, and noticing that. And again, if this is something that you haven't done before, which most of us are very disconnected from our body system, and, the experience of anxiety, it's a body experience, right? It's happening in our nervous system. And so returning to our body and being able to bring in this sense of calm and expansion and peace in our body is really the root of turning things around and going from an experience of feeling that, anxiety runs your life and you can't find a moment of peace and calm and enjoyment, to cultivating a practice where you can create that calm and peace and enjoyment in your body. So this last little piece of the exercise, you find something in your environment that brings you good feelings. And I do recommend having like a nice smelling lotion that you can just keep with you. Or if you have maybe a piece of jewelry that means something to you that you think is beautiful. Or if you can, just resource with anything around you. Right now it's spring, and so there's, green grass, and there's plants, and there's flowers, and, just the sun. The sun can be a very resourcing object that helps keep us alive. And if you can step out and get a little bit of sunshine on you, that could be the piece that you reach to for this resourcing object in your environment. If you have nothing around you, you can even find a memory. So if you think back to the last time, or just the most significant time you can think of where you were very happy, and if you can bring that image up. So for me, I hiked in the state park with a friend a couple weeks ago, and it was a beautiful spring day, flowers everywhere, yellow ones, blue ones. The birds were singing. It was just I had the day off from work. It was just such a beautiful moment. And so if I can just bring that memory up in my mind and notice the happiness that I felt, and then pay attention to right now, when I pull that image up in my mind, in this moment, I can feel the happiness, and then I can sense into my body and feel some expansion. So your resourcing object can be a memory that, as long as it's very tangible to you, to where you can start to feel it in this moment, then it works. So that last piece of the exercise, we are noticing our resourcing object, and we are just sensing into our body, allowing those good feelings about the object, the memory, the smell, whatever it is, we're allowing it to impact our physical body and our nervous system. And this gets easier. So in the beginning, it's going to feel a little foreign, a little clunky, a little weird. But as you practice it, as you make a practice of it, even just looking at your object, you can probably immediately start to feel the expansion, the lightness, right? To feel that like, oh, I'm clicking into the green and this is working. All right, we're going to start with our box breath. So I want you to inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wonderful. Take a couple of nice, easy breaths. And so now we are going to go into the Vooo. And so we're going to take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, you are going to make the sound Vooo like a foghorn. And you're going to pay attention to the vibration in your throat. And after the air is all the way out, you're just going to sense into your body for a few seconds and just notice. All right, here we go. Big breath in. Just allow yourself a few easy breaths. Notice into your body. Notice any expansion, any sense of lightness. Wonderful. So now you're going to look to your resourcing object. And so for me, it's this glowing salt lamp. And so I want you to just take in your object. I want you to just notice what it is about this object that makes you feel happy. You feel a sense of calm or peace. Kind of just notice what you like about it. And so for me, I love the color and the glow and just the meaning. To me, this signifies how there's radiance inside of all of us. And it's our privilege to uncover our radiance and to identify the radiance in those around us. And sensing into your body and noticing how your body tells you that you like this. Looking for that sense of expansion and that sense of lightness. And maybe some warmth, and really connecting with that feeling and holding on to that. And there you go. So that is a 3-minute anxiety extinguisher that you can do anytime. And I really do recommend doing this as a regular daily practice. So if you know you typically have some anxiety on your drive to work, doing this in the first 3 minutes of your drive, and then also maybe on your drive home, right? To help you put yourself into a more calm and connected state before you get home to see your family. So I hope that you have enjoyed this and that this is something that can really help you. You know, if you experience anxiety on a regular basis, just knowing that it's not a life sentence. Anxiety is not a thing that you own. Anxiety is a state that you are in, and it is a state that you can move through and to get out of. You can get into a better state that is more comfortable and allows you to connect and to enjoy. And so one last thing before we go, I did just want to mention that this is something that you can start to do almost like as a workout. This is something that I like to do. This Peter Levine calls it pendulation. So sensing into contraction. So noticing, let's say there's something that happened that you're upset about. And so thinking about that for a minute and allowing yourself to feel the contraction inside, and then going to a resourcing object and then putting your body back into that state of expansion, and then going back to the disturbing thought and feeling the contraction, and then going back to the resourcing object and feeling the expansion. And so what you're doing is you're helping your nervous system to become more resilient and more flexible and to allow yourself to shift out of that red anxiety state and into a calm, green enjoyment state much quicker, and you'll have just this sense of connection with your body and with your nervous system. So that's a little extra credit if you're up for it. And again, I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for watching. We've been here for a year now, just talking about these things that impact all of us, right? And just so happy that you're on this self-development journey with me. And it is a lifetime journey, right? There's always this next level of understanding ourselves and moving through the world in a way that we can have an impact and have enjoyment. And so I hope that you will come back next week, where I will be here with another message for you. Take care.